Following video is brought to you by BSEN, Boston Sports Entertainment Network. Please subscribe, hit that like button, and as always, leave a comment, and thank you for enjoying the video.
I got the Boston Celtics going to the final. I got them winning the
It's time to represent your city. Put your hands up. Cali, you know we do it for Boston. Hey, ain't nobody gonna like Boston. Yeah, hey, ain't nobody do it like Boston. Where the legends get made, where the banners get raised, bright lights, big stage. Boston. All the fire we bring in a city full of rings, it's a beautiful thing out in Boston. And you ain't hard like that. You don't put it on the line with your squad like that. That's right, Boston. All we do is win like cigars in the gym, and we at it again. I say, Beantown, what's up? What's up? 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 Feel the energy shift, now we jumping at the gym. Represent, showing out how we ball above the rim. Larry Legend, 86, to the truth in '08. Cement your name with the all-time greats. Still banner 18 in the rafters. Celtic green, only green that matters. It's about that time. Ain't another city that's louder than mine. Always gonna shine with the game on the line. What you think was gonna happen, man? That's how we do it in Boston. Ain't nobody gonna like Boston. Yeah. Ain't nobody do it like Boston.
All right, welcome back to Dynasty Proud, episode 3, brought to you by the Boston Sports Entertainment Network. My name is Jason. His name is Alex. So, Alex, how was your New Year's? How was your holiday?
Everything was good, man. Just down here in South Florida, we had a little bit of a cold front, drop below 70 this past week. So, I hope I have everyone's thoughts and prayers on that. But it was good, though. It's busy. Time to get back into the grind, though. How was yours, Jason?
It was pretty good. A little hectic because of work. My Christmas was pretty good. Worked on New Year's, so a little hectic. I'm jealous of the 70-degree weather because here, I believe right now it is probably high 30s, cloudy day, miserable day, and we're getting snow this weekend, I believe. So, not looking forward to that. But we got some stories to cover in the NBA. We have a huge trade that went down to one of our division rivals, the New York Knicks. They acquired OG Anunoby for RJ Barrett. Manuel quickly second round pick. So give me your thoughts on that trade. Does that impact the standings of the East? Do you think the Knicks now get a boost? Just give me your thoughts on that.
So I think for both teams, the trade made sense. For the Knicks, they consolidated. They got the best player in the deal in OG Anunoby. I believe he has 1 year left in his contract after. So if you look at the thing, RJ Barrett, he came with a lot of potential. He does have his good nights, but I don't think he was ever leading them anywhere. And then with Emmanuel quickly, I think this is in the last year of his deal. So they didn't, obviously, it looks like, plan on re-signing him. So from Toronto's perspective, I think they got two good young pieces. I think they're going to eventually blow that up. They're going to build around Scotty Barnes, and now they'll have RJ Barrett and quickly if they keep him past this year. But I can see them moving Siakam pretty soon to a contender, recuperating more assets. From the New York perspective, though, I think I don't think it moves them up necessarily, but it solidifies them more. Like, I think, OG is a good, what do you consider, 3-and-D type of player. We've run into him a lot. I remember the playoffs in 2020 in the bubble where he hit that game winner against us. He's a player I always really wanted, but he makes sense for the Knicks. So now you have Brunson, you have Randall, and you have OG. So for the Knicks, it's what's next. Is there another move to be had there? Because for me, it's like I think the Celtics are in a tier of their own. Maybe you have Milwaukee, Philly, and even Miami as fringe tiers in that. I think New York is in the tier below that. They're in the Indiana, they're in the Orlando, Cleveland currently. You could even throw Miami in that, but playoff time, I have more faith in them. So I think it's a win-win for both teams. What do you think, Jason?
So I actually forgot to add, there was another guy in that trade, and that was Michael Flynn also went to the Knicks from the Raptors. He was Malachi Flynn. He was kind of their three-point shooter that goes back to the Knicks. But to your point on if they're done, I heard rumors that they may be eyeing Karl Anthony Towns. I don't know if him and Randall kind of make sense together. Probably not. They probably have to move out Randall to get him. But on the trade overall, to me, when I look at this trade, RJ Barrett goes back home to Toronto. That's probably a piece that's younger, probably fits to the Barnes timeline. Siakam's kind of a piece where he's going to control his own destiny because he has a year left on his deal. or he may be expiring at the end of this year, and he can kind of control, like, all right, maybe I'll go there and re-sign. And teams that are going to inquire about Siakam are going to want to know, will you re-sign with us? And he kind of will say, yeah, I will, or no, I won't. So that's that piece. But to me, when I look at this trade, Emmanuel quickly was a guy that I think New York probably didn't want to give up, but had to in order to move RJ Barrett, because his contract is kind of steep, and he hasn't really performed to the strength of his contract. So moving a guy like quickly, who's an energy spark off the bench, and kind of a guy that gives you those necessary threes and plays hard. They're going to miss that off the bench. Quentin Grimes, who's a player that wasn't getting a ton of minutes with New York, is probably going to step up into that role. Will he fill out? We don't know. But as this trade pertains to the East and the Celtics, I don't really see it being much of a threat. OG is a nice player, but he still has room to grow. Obviously, I think in Toronto, his development hit a peak, and they needed to move him. But I don't know if this is the move that I think New York wanted to make and was like, oh yeah, well now we're considered a top 3 team in the East. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I just think in the end, this team, they need to make a bigger move to make a bigger impact, like maybe like a Donovan Mitchell would have been more for me to really say, all right, we're coming for the top. This move, I don't know. I still think there's a move to be made for New York, but yeah, I don't know. It was a decent move, but I think if I really had to pick a winner, I would say that Toronto got what they wanted in terms of their timeline of being younger, building around Barnes. They get quickly, they get Barrett, they get a second round pick out of it. So I think that's more of where it would go.
I agree with you. To touch on your point, I mean, a year ago or even this past summer, I would say, okay, maybe Karl-Anthony Towns, because it is someone that they have sought after. But right now, why would Minnesota move him? Leading the West, they have a nice cohesive unit going on. I mean, he's probably the only player in their lineup that doesn't play defense, but he's a scoring threat. I mean, he would be perfect for the Knicks, but, Randall would have to be in that deal. So it could make sense, but it's like, why does Minnesota do that? Why do they mess with a good thing right now?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they would want to do that, but I think if you're the Knicks, you got to try. I don't really know any other superstar off the top of my head right now that's available besides Siakam and Mitchell, and they're not obviously going to get Siakam and then Mitchell. He wanted to be in New York, but they chose to go the Brunson route, and they just acquired Anunoby, so I don't even think that really makes any sense. Do you have any last thoughts on that? Or,
I mean, Donovan Mitchell, being from New York, I could see that being a destination. But it's like, do you wait for free agency? Do you hope, he's going to come there come the summer? I mean, you could look at Brooklyn, who's teetering on the edge of a play-in versus not even making that. Do they push some of their chips to the center of the table with maybe Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas, and a pick or two to go get Mitchell? And then Cleveland, yeah, do you want to make a run with him? I mean, you're probably better off with him than without him. But if you don't feel like he's going to stay in Cleveland long term, and you don't have any real viable path to real contention this year, then maybe that's the better move for them, is just to take one step back, recuperate some assets, and then, rebuild going forward and try for it next year.
Yeah, I agree. I just think, in all, I think the Knicks definitely wanted to make this move. They thought it was going to be desperate, and acquiring him wasn't bad. I mean, he's a nice player. I just think there's room to grow, and hopefully New York he gets that opportunity. But we did have quite a week for the Celtics. They went 3-1. They took care of business against Detroit, San Antonio, and Toronto. But last night they suffered a loss against the OKC Thunder. But I want to start with Detroit because I mentioned on the last episode that game was going to be tough for the Celtics. And boy, was it tough for them. I know Jaylen Brown did not play, but Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, and Duran all had a pretty good night. Cunningham scored 31 points. Jaden Ivey had 22, and Jalen Duran had 14 rebounds and 15 points. The game went into OT. The Celtics did struggle, but I want to know your thoughts. Was this game was it a good game for the Celtics? Was it a game that you look at and be like, man, we should have won more, more convincingly? Just give me your thoughts on that.
So I think that game combined with the Toronto game, which we'll touch on after, were both very stressful games, but it showed different things about this team, both good and bad. Now, I mean, Detroit, we all kind of joked around. It's like, oh, we can't be the team to end that streak that they have. But when you're on a streak like that, every game to you is almost like your Super Bowl. It's like your championship, It's like you have more at stake versus, we were coming off of a long road trip. You see this very inferior opponent. You're already sitting down Jaylen Brown. You figure, okay, just the talent alone, we can just go through the motions, especially at home, and defeat them. And we came out so lackluster energy-wise, effort-wise, and Detroit was pedal to the metal. They're hitting everything. And, when you're playing like that, it's just it just kept compounding. And being down 19 at halftime, I still felt like we could win the game. I was like, just get it to 10 or under by the fourth quarter. And, they kind of had an inverted third quarter from what we had seen in the past from the Celtics. They came out really strong. They got the game down to single digits and they just kept fighting. And so it showed a lot of resolve in this team because I think that game they lose last year or the last couple of years,
Yep.
where a team just comes and kicks them in the mouth. It's a team that has no business being on the floor with them or beating us. And so it was nice to see, the bounce back, that they stood strong. They were able to fight their way back. And even after it went to overtime, expending all that energy to get back into it, the big Porzingis three at the end of regulation, the big Derek White three in overtime. It was encouraging to see. So ultimately, yeah, a win is a win. There's 82 games. Not every game is going to be pretty. Yeah, we'd like to beat Detroit by 30 and 40, but at the end of the day, a win is a win. What do you think?
I agree. I think obviously like this game coming in, I thought it was going to be tough because listen, Detroit may have lost 27 straight games, but the last 10 of their games was super close. Like they've just been a super unlucky team. They have the young talent. They have some vet guys. Cunningham, Ivy, and Durant are all good players. They have Bogdanovich, Isaiah Stewart. Like they have good pieces. They were just getting extremely unlucky. So I knew like that team was desperate for a win. Celtics were coming off of a West Coast trip, first game at home after a long road, and I knew it was going to be tough. And turns out it was tough. And they like you said, they lose that game last year. They lose a game like that, and they were looking at ourselves being like, well, do they have the mental toughness to be able to come, compete on these nights against teams they don't belong, on the floor with them? And then, you get into that whole argument, and I'm glad we steered clear away from that because those arguments always suck to have. But Tatum finished with 31 in that game. Porzingis finished with 35, and we discussed this before we came on the air. Porzingis is turning into the second scoring option on this team behind Tatum. I want to know, is that a good thing for this team, or is it a bad thing? Should Jaylen Brown be that number 2 scoring option and Porzingis be the number 3? Just give me your thoughts on that.
I don't think there needs to be a clear pecking order. I think a lot of that is matchup and situational. But Porzingis versus Jaylen Brown, like Porzingis just has so many mismatches. Like he's so difficult to defend, especially when he gets the ball at the top of the key. No one can block his shot. He just has a height advantage over everybody. He's going to get his shot off. So I feel like Porzingis' shot, I feel more confident in the way he can take it. He can drive down low. He can post up. He can hit the mid-range. He can hit threes. He can hit step-back threes. So I like Porzingis as a second option. There was a stat out there prior to the San Antonio game that he's the only player in the NBA averaging over 20 points per game on less than 13 shots. So I feel like he should be taking more shots as long as he takes it in the flow of the offense. The thing with Jaylen Brown is he can shoot you into a game and he can shoot you out of a game. He went on one of those runs, I believe it was against against Toronto the next night, where he just scored like 10 or 12 straight points. And he has that ability, which is really exciting. But he also sometimes, like, he'll take tough shots. He'll go in, 1-on-2, 1-on-3 on fast breaks. And it's not always the best shot for the team, as well as his ball handling. So I think Jaylen Brown ultimately is our number 2. But I love that we have the option of having a Porzingis as number 2. Some games it could be Derek White. Some games it could be Drew Holiday. There's so many weapons on this team, so it's a great problem to have.
No, I agree. We have a bunch of options to go to. Anybody can step up at any given night. It just seems lately that Porzingis has just been that stable number 2 option that this team, is desperately needed. Jaylen Brown has kind of been a little streaky. I know he did go off against Toronto. I believe he had 30 or 31, if I'm not mistaken. But I've noticed that Porzingis has been, a force these last couple of games, and it's been good to see. Moving towards Toronto, we won. Siakam went 10 of 18, 27 points. Barnes went 10 of 24, 30 points. Joe Patel went 5 from 8, 10 rebounds, 12 points. But I do want to get to this before we get into the game. Joe Patel, do you remember last year at the trade deadline when people were saying he was the move we needed to make as that backup big behind Horford? Do you remember that?
Jakob Poeltl?
Yes.
Jakob Poeltl, yeah. So he's been mentioned the last couple of years. And you watch him, it's like nothing necessarily stands out. Like he doesn't have the athleticism, but he just makes the right moves. He makes the right plays. Like his little push shot that he has, he's a big rebounder. and we were getting killed on the boards by him. So I mean, he's a good player, and when they gave him 4 and 20 a year, I thought it was a little bit of an overpay, especially for a team that I didn't see being a true championship contender. Maybe he eventually gets moved because he's not a young guy; he's a little bit more towards a veteran at this point. So maybe he eventually gets moved, but he's a good player. I like him.
I do too. I pointed him out because um this, when Toronto traded for him, that was kind of like a win now type of move. Like, remember, it was us and Toronto. I think the final two teams that were looking to trade for him. Toronto obviously ultimately got him, and I don't know if I've necessarily been impressed with what I've seen from him, especially against the Celtics. So I just wanted to mention him because I was like, you know what, maybe I'm glad we didn't make that move. Because ultimately, if we had him and we signed him to that extension, obviously Porzingis wouldn't be here, and I think Porzingis is a better player than Jakob Portal. But against the Celtics in Toronto, did you see anything in that game that you liked, disliked? I know that game, I believe we won 130-128. Is there anything you saw that you liked in that game?
So it's a contrast to the prior game against Detroit, where they were fighting an uphill battle the whole time and had to come back at the end to win that game. This game, we were in the driver's seat the entire game. We were just in complete control. We were up 13 heading into the fourth quarter, and then they just completely took their foot off the gas. And then Toronto couldn't miss with, Schroeder, and then OG was still there then, Siakam. Like, everybody was just hitting all these shots, and we just looked so lackadaisical. And that 13-point lead went down to 2 in a matter of 3 minutes, and then we were losing. And so it was frustrating to see that happen so quickly. And I was just thinking, this is a game they're going to give away. And again, to reference an earlier point, this is a game I think last year's team loses as well. Like, they would have been demoralized after giving up that lead so quick, get back into isolation basketball, start pressing, where they just made the right plays, everything going through Porzingis. Derek White hit some big shots in that game. And then just holding on and finding a way to win. The end of that game just took forever with all the fouls. And then, they missed a shot at the buzzer, but then they reviewed it and there was a foul with a second left. So they had an extra opportunity. But those are two different ways that they won those two games against inferior opponents, but they're games that they had to win and they won them. So my takeaway is encouraged that they won 2 games that things didn't go their way. And there was a lot of crap that happened, but they found a way to hold on for the win.
I agree. It was a great game. The Celtics, they're winning games that they should win. They're not losing games, that they should win like last year. And I think that's kind of when this conversation started, can they compete against these teams, the teams that maybe are beneath them. So it's good to see that they're winning against teams that they should beat. So the San Antonio Spurs, I wasn't able to watch that game live. I did see some highlights. So I just want to get some of your thoughts on Wembanyama, how he looked against the Celtics. I know I saw the interview with Derek White when Wembanyama took like one step from the free throw line and like dunked it, and White was like, "Hey, I just had to get out of the way." And so I just want to know your thoughts, maybe how Wembanyama looked. I know that game was kind of a rout from the beginning. It wasn't much of a competitive game. I don't even know if any of the Celtics starters really played in the fourth. Just give me your thoughts on Wembanyama and what you think you saw from the Celtics.
So Wembanyama, I mean, he's to use the lack of a better word, he's a freak. Like, some of the things he can do, and with his size, it's incredible. Seeing him go against Porzingis and seeing someone the same size as Porzingis, I mean, obviously he still, has a lot of room to grow as a player. I think he's going to be great, but, he hit some shots. He's a big deterrent at the rim. And what you're referencing with the Derek White, where he made a business decision to get out of the way and not go up. I'm watching Wemby on the fast break, and I see Derek White running up to him, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, this will be the play of the year if he can somehow block this shot. But then Wemby just takes off from the free throw line, and he has those stretch arms like Gumby, if you remember that, or the guy from The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
And the son of Derek White, this all NBA defender just decided to, evacuate to the left. But as far as the game, the first half, it was a little back and forth. First quarter, most of the first half, it was around single digits or low double digits, and then they just put their foot on their throat coming out of halftime, and that game got out of hand really quickly. And Jaylen Brown had a couple big dunks. Derek White had a big dunk on a turnover. So it was definitely exciting to watch. It was a great way to end the year, and definitely made for a better night for me. Getting to watch that. But I mean, those 3 games, they won them in 3 different ways. I mean, the Spurs was going away, so that was good that they learned their lesson from the previous Detroit and Toronto game. But like you said, it's taking care of business against teams you should beat. Now, they've had the number 1 strength of schedule so far, And on top of that, this upcoming schedule in January, they have the third toughest in the NBA. They have 4 different back-to-backs, including multiple cities. It just doesn't make sense. Like all of our, when you see the stat that we have the easiest remaining schedule, that's all because of the last 3-4 weeks of the year. That's where we get all of our Detroit, Washington, Charlotte's, and all of our home games. So it's a tough stretch until then. And by that point, we may be resting everybody, but taking care of business when you can. So yeah, I mean, do you want to get into the game from last night against Oklahoma City? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, that was a very exciting game. I mean, it was stressful for sure, but it was very exciting. But I want to know your takeaway.
So watching OKC last night, made me think of how nasty they're going to be with all those, those picks that they have, the 10 and 12 first round picks that they got stored away from Sam Presti just going to work in the Paul George trade and all the other trades he made. But, watching that OKC, it made me think of, this team is going to be great coming up when they get older. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander went 14 from 22 from the floor, 3 of 5 from 3, scored 36. He's averaging like 30 points the last 2 weeks. He's been absolutely insane. Giddey kind of went off 4 of 7 from 3, 8 from 14 from the floor, 23 points. And Holmgren, their most recent first round pick, 5 or 6 from the floor, 3 or 5 from 3, 14 points. And then from the Celtics side, Tingus 34, Tatum 30, D Wade 5 from 9 from 3, scoring 19. So, I mean, the game was super competitive. I actually thought it was going to go into OT. But I love Porzingis' game. I love Tatum's game. Brown was kind of a lost cause last night. I think he went 0 from 8 from the floor or from the 3-point line to get 15 points. But I think it's Celtics. I don't really put too much stock into it because they played a good team at home, young team at home. The game kind of went as I thought it was going to be a close game, but I thought the Celtics would win. But ultimately, you're going to have games like that sometimes. You're not going to win every game. You're going to go up against good teams that are going to beat you. It's how it is. OKC is a good young team. We're coming off 3 straight wins. So I mean, you're going to lose here and here. So do you have any thoughts on that game?
So coming off 6 straight wins, actually, we've actually
wins.
had 4 different streaks of 5+ this year. So, I mean, losses are going to happen. That's only our 3rd loss in the last 5 weeks. So, I mean, to everybody on Twitter, like, oh, this, Celtics, another Celtics loss, like they get, they come out of the hiding when the Celtics finally lose a game. Like, we're not going to go 82-0. We weren't going to go 76-6. Even if we win 65 games this year, that's 17 losses. That's still 10 more of these. So, everyone has to get out of the way. But as far as the actual game, I mean, that team's impressive. They almost kind of remind me of the pre-Tatum Celtics, except with a Tatum. With they're good role players, and eventually they're going to have to make a decision because they have a lot of good young players. They have all these draft picks, and you can't just let them go to waste. But ultimately, do you push some of your chips to the center of the table and make a move, to get a star? Like maybe this year, if they feel like they're close enough, they can package a few of those picks since they have so many of them. Go get a Siakam to put into that lineup because I feel like what that team could really use is like a 4 or 5. They have a lot of good guards, they have a lot of good wings, but like a 4 or 5 or a big down low to try to take them to the next level. Because I mean, the West, as tough as it is, I mean, I think they can compete with anybody. The one thing they will have going against them is inexperience. But I mean, Chet Holmgren looks great for being a second-year player. Really, it's his first year. Second-year player since he was drafted the year prior.
Mm-hmm.
But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I mean, he's so quick. I mean, he was eating Drew Holiday alive last night. And to touch base on Drew, like, it was, I think, his worst game as a Celtic. In the beginning, it's like he had just eaten popcorn before the game. Like, he couldn't hold on to a pass. He couldn't make a pass. He was getting blown by a defense. It's almost like pick and struggle. Like, if you're going to be that inept on defense for such a great defender, then at least you have to show up offensively. And he really didn't do much of anything. And to get to Jaylen Brown, the 4 of 18, I'm not as concerned about because, I mean, that's going to happen. I mean, Porzingis and Tatum were carrying us. He went 7 of 8 from the free throw line. Unfortunately, that one miss was a big miss at the end of the 4th quarter. But the 0 of 8 from 3, I've just noticed like his 3-point shot the last couple of years has really kind of eluded him. Like he'll have games where he'll go like 5 of 6, 5 of 7. But overall, I feel like most of his 3-point shooting nights, his percentages are very low. And it's not always the best looks that he's taking. Like he's taking them in transition. He's taking them with, a defender right in his face when there is an open guy on the floor. So it's more about his shot selection. But as far as the game, I mean, that 3rd quarter, it looked like the old Celtics. Like Oklahoma City couldn't miss. We were taking inadvertent shots when things were getting bad. We started reverting to ISO basketball. So it was frustrating. It was encouraging at the end to see the run that they made. And even with every time they get it down to 6, which was the number, Oklahoma City just hit some tough three, and that should be a backbreaking three. Chet Holmgren hit 2 of them. The Celtics just pushed it right back and came right back. And then Derek White, I think he's actually our most clutch player. Like, he just seems like he's always hitting big shots for us. Hit a big three where he just, floated it, and it just didn't touch anything but the bottom of the net to get it to 2. And that Porzingis three, which, was called the 2, which changed the whole outlook of the game, because if that's a 3, I'm sorry. If that's a 3, it's a 1-point game. And even if you foul and they hit both free throws, it's a 1-possession game and you still have a timeout. Instead, it's 2.8 seconds left. You're down 2. And so you pretty much need them to miss a free throw, which they didn't. So that was the game. So, I don't want to take too much stock in it. Like I said, they're not going to win every game. There's no shame in losing on the road to Oklahoma City. It's a great team. Well, I don't want to say a great team, a very good team. But it's how we bounce back this coming weekend. It was an entertaining game. We, some of our old flaws and habits reared their head, and we couldn't shake it at the end. It was just too big of a hole. But it was encouraging to see the way they fought back.
So I'd say a couple of your points. I think Siakam would be perfect for that team. That move didn't even cross my mind until you said it. With his age, going with Shea and Giddey and Holmgren, I think that would be, such a good move for them. And I do agree with your point. OKC has to make up their mind. They can't keep drafting first round picks and build this team, because eventually you're going to run out of spots. You got to use some of your young players that you have and your picks and go get somebody that can help you win now. So Scal last night did an interview with a ex NBA player who I think played for OKC, and he was saying the same thing. He was kind of you have all this assets, you have pretty much unlimited assets. Go do something with it. You have the resources. But then he also saying maybe they should wait this year, see how their playoff, run goes if they make it there. And then next in the offseason go, all right, what do we need? What do we need to do? So it's kind of 2 ways that you can go about it. Kind of see, pace yourself, see where you are in the playoffs, how far you make it with the roster that you have, and then make adjustments in the offseason. But yeah, they're a good team. I love their team. If you're an OKC fan, you should be thrilled with them. But moving to the week ahead, tell me what you like about the week ahead, what you think is going to be a struggle. I know we have tons of back-to-backs. I believe we have 4, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know how that happens or how we have 4 back-to-backs in a month. But it sounds like the Celtics could be heading for a tough part of the schedule.
It feels like Adam Silver is throwing everything at us to not have us have the best record this year, but we just keep winning in spite of it. With this week, we have Utah, who's not a great team, but they are a hot team. I believe they've won 4 or 5 in a row. They played Detroit tonight, but that's a game we have to take care of business with, obviously, to keep our home streak alive. But because of the road ahead, that's a very, very winnable game. Then we play the second night of a back-to-back in Indiana, who, they're a Jekyll and Hyde team. We beat them by 51, and then in the tournament they beat us. They've beat Milwaukee 3 or 4 times already. They play them again tonight, actually, at home. But Indiana, after tonight, doesn't play until Saturday when we play them. But we'll be coming off a back-to-back in Boston. So that may be a game where, the legs are tired. There's a lot going on. But if we could take those 2 games, then we play Indiana 2 days later. So if we can win 2 out of the next 3 games, maybe the back-to-back in Indiana is the one they lose, but they play another game in Indiana. So hopefully they can at least take care of business then. And then coming up in the week ahead, we may have a podcast before this, but we have the toughest double, I think, of our season, where it's Minnesota at home and then the next night in Milwaukee. So that could be a tough one, because already Milwaukee, with our Giannis defender being Al Horford and him definitely not playing the back-to-back of that, it may be a long night. I could almost see them going skeleton crew like they did on a back-to-back against Milwaukee last year, where they threw Derek White and everybody on our bench out there. And we actually took them to overtime, and we were ahead most of that game. It's the mentality of they kind of play down to the opponent. And then at the end, that Drew Holiday actually hit a lot of big shots for them, and then Giannis in overtime. But I'd like to see us win at least 2 of the next 3 going into that rough doubleheader. But got to at least split with Indiana and then beat Utah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Utah is, it's going to be a sneaky tough game. They have a good lineup, but, I think we can handle business. The Pacers back-to-back is going to be tough. Obviously, the last time we played the Pacers, we lost in the play-in tournament, in the playoffs version of the play-in tournament. The in-season tournament. So they're going to be a tough team. And then the Minnesota Bucks back-to-back. obviously I can't predict who's going to play and who's going to sit for the back-to-backs, but I would expect, one of those games to be a tough game, probably an L, and I'd probably expect us to lose one of the games against the Pacers just because of how they sit players and how they manage load management and injury management for what the box score says. But the back-to-back's going to kill us. Like, we have 4. I don't understand, whoever's making the schedule, Adam Silver, whoever, AI, Chat GBT, whoever's making the the schedule, how we get stuck with 4 back-to-backs. That's kind of crazy, but maybe they do that for us to have an easier schedule at the end of the season when when other teams are playing probably their hardest schedule. But I'm looking forward to it. I like seeing the Jazz. I was trying to go to the Jazz game, but I have to work. I was going to go to the Jazz game, but ultimately I'm not able to because I like that team. They're a sneaky good team, or sneaky team in terms of they have the talent, but they just can't finish the job on most nights.
I think that team's getting blown up by the deadline. I think Danny's gonna move Olynyk. He's gonna move Clarkson. He might move Marketing. Like, I could
Clarkson
see
and his 23 million.
Yeah,
He's getting paid a ton.
Yeah, I mean, that player, money aside, if he was making 5-6 million, that would be the perfect Celtics target, like a scoring option like that off the bench. But 23 million, no way. I mean, obviously we couldn't do that if we wanted to. And if we had 23 million to spare, it wouldn't be for Jordan Clarkson. But I mean, I can see a lot of those pieces being moved. Utah's not ready to win right now. They have some good pieces, as we mentioned, but just take care of business. Take care of business this week. Especially coming off the loss last night. Like, there's no shame in that loss. But you lose to Utah, all of a sudden you're looking at 2 in a row and then a back-to-back in Indiana, with the second game in Indiana, with the Minnesota and Milwaukee game coming up. These things can snowball fast. So take care of business Friday night and then, go from there.
Yeah, I agree. We got some business to take care of. Hopefully we can pull out some wins. Hopefully we can go another 3-1. So when we talk about when we have our next recording, we can go, oh yeah, the Celtics come 3-1 again, because those are it's great when they can go 3-1 in a week. It just proves that they're just one of the best teams in the league, and they're doing everything they can to win. And injuries are staying good. We haven't really had any long-term, 4 or 6 week type of injuries. Hopefully that stays the same. Porzingis stays healthy. Knock on wood if you have it. That's I'm excited though. Team's playing well. We're kind of getting in the right momentum. We're in the dog days this season. January, February tends to be like the all right, you got to grind through. Same with the Bruins. You got to grind through, the hard winter months, but hopefully we can stay on track and rack up some more dubs.
Especially with the deadline coming up as well. So, a lot's going to be happening quick. The deadline's just over a month away. The landscape of the NBA is going to change. I mean, the Celtics will, as we get closer, we'll talk about moves as they start happening or as they start being rumored. But it's going by quick. We've already played over 33 games.
Yeah, that's crazy. That deadline should be fun though. I mean, a lot of teams are going to try to see if they can equal us and try to get to our level. I wouldn't be surprised if Milwaukee and Miami make a move. The Knicks already made a move. It should be fun. But I think that does it for this episode of Dynasty Proud. You can follow us at Dynasty Proud 18 on Twitter, and then on YouTube at BSEN 617. So have a great day, everybody.